It's time for class. Come on in. Get in here and take your seats. Come on. Y'all slow. It's like Friday or something. Y'all think you got the weekend off already. Class ain't over yet. All right, enough. Stop. Welcome to the Road to Concord. I'm your host / Professor Joe Bakanovic. You are watching us on homeroom. Here is Rumble. Go to Rumble. Search the channels for the Road to Concord. It's all one word. If you have not already done so, please subscribe. Hit the follow button. Yes, you might have to set up an account. It's easy. It's quick. It's free. Helps the show. Please do that if you don't mind. You can also catch us on Facebook. Today we are throwing the show to YouTube. We shouldn't get ourselves in too much trouble there today. And you can catch us on Twitch and Twitter. If you're on any of those alternatives, you'll see in the comment sections that I've already thrown up the link to your homework for today, your show notes. If you're on Rumble, it's in the description page. The link is there. That'll take you to our blog page, theroadtoconcord.com. It's where I throw up all the handouts, links, and everything that you're going to need to follow along in this classroom today, or to go back and find them later on. After the show, I will upload it to Podbean, iHeart, and Spotify, and you can get your podcasts there, download them, listen to it on the way home if you want. And like I say, we have our blog page at theroadtoconcord.com, and the phone number is 229-469-0335. And that phone number is supposedly up and working today. I checked with it before the show started. It thinks it's doing okay. Finally, you can email me, joe@theroadtoconcord.com. Several of you use that regularly, and I'm getting used to your emails. Give me a little bit of a chance. I'll try to answer those of you that are still waiting to hear from me. I'll try to get to that this weekend. I've been a little preoccupied shutting down my former business. Almost there. Shouldn't have more than 2 weeks total. Wrap it all up and be done. Then we're going to concentrate just on this show. We're going to be working on a more dedicated studio at that time. Phone number will probably change then, but we'll see how that works. Background will be a little different, and content will start to improve because that screen behind me will be more than just a cute picture. It'll become a teaching tool, and we'll have a different camera view that we can focus just on that, and I can use it to run through things I want to scroll through, and it'll be big enough for y'all to see at that time. So we've got lots of plans for the future. We're getting there. Today, excuse me, on tap for today, we're going to rewrite the Constitution together. Yeah. Or at least we're going to start. We might not get done today, but we're going to do this in a rather unique way with a intent. And this is going to be intentional, specific purpose. And we're going to do this carefully. Mark Levin came out with a book several years ago. He calls it the Liberty Amendments. I bought it with high hope. I was disappointed. He got too specific. He wrote that book just to make money and to stir the pot. Everybody that, my opinion, Joe's personal opinion, conservative talk radio is nothing more than a vent for a pressure cooker to give you places to throw your sucker down in the dirt, get it all dirty, stomp around, scream, get it all out, and then go back to doing what they've trained you to do. Nothing's happening. And I've noticed that all they do is want to stir the pot. Once they get in there, all those folks, they just, oh, wow, I can make a lot of money. And then they fall in line. I don't want to be those people. I told you before, I had an opportunity to be good money. Start out with 220, 230 shows, national syndicate. I'd probably be a huge name. Everybody would know who I am in this country right now, at least conservatives, if I'd have taken it. And I would have sold me in the process. I will not do it. Ever. I don't do this for money. To the extent that we need money to run the show, it's just the fuel that goes in the tank to keep the motor running. That's how I've always looked at it with my older business, and it worked for 21 years. It was just, what I did was resin casting. Money was no different than the resin. I needed resin to make the product that I sold. I needed the money to buy the resin to make the product that I sold. It was all just part of the engine. But for me, we're not going to do that. So I was very disappointed with Mark Levin. I was looking for him to address the issue differently than he did. We're going to just do it as a think exercise today. It'll make this show a little different. It'll be a little choppy. There'll be times where I'm going to actually stop on you and I'm going to write notes down. I have a printed out copy of the United States Constitution as it was originally written. We'll go over that in a second. I put it in your show notes. You can print this out as a PDF. I also put the links in there for you. We'll cover that in a moment. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through this line by line. So today's going to be a chance to have the Constitution read to you, as long as you can put up with my voice reading it. And we're going to stop at point to point, time to time. It's on the slideshow. You're going to get to read along. And we'll read a slide, and then we'll go back and we'll discuss possible changes and alterations. The point here is to do exactly what Jefferson said. Jefferson made a comment, words to the effect that says, let's raise a standard. He's talking to his generation. Let's raise a standard by which later generations can repair. In other words, let's build a country and let them know what we're doing, why we're trying to do it, how we're trying to do it, such that in the future, when it breaks down, they can fix it. Because Jefferson knew that we'd get to the day we're at now, although he was looking to the Civil War. He didn't imagine we'd get to where we're at now, I don't think, but he might have. He was a brilliant man. But we're gonna attempt to repair this standard using their playbook, natural law, natural rights, as John Locke understood them, and declaration as our goal, as our guidepost. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to do it together. Comment section, I'll be reading it carefully today. Today's going to be a little, like I said, little choppy. So if you're listening, you're going to have to bear with this one. This one's probably not going to be very entertaining at all. I don't expect this to ever be one of my best rated shows. The only people who are going to stick with me through this one are those who are actually serious about getting down into the weeds and doing the work that would be necessary to fix this country. So if I only have 2 of you watching, that'll be good to me today, because we're gonna start pretending to be founding fathers, and we're gonna do the work. And everybody's all happy to throw their suckers down and make a display and rant and rave, and basically the look at me, I'm a conservative peacock. I want to virtual signal in the conservative way. But as soon as somebody hands you a shovel, tells you to roll up your sleeves and get to work, you disappear just like a progressive. Well, today we're going to grab our shovels. So let's just get going. Let's rewrite the United States Constitution together. I drew it from here. This is the United States Constitution, a transcript. It is from archives.gov/founding-docs/constitution/transcript. If you need it, go to the show notes. It's already linked for you. There it goes. You can download the PDF. It's got all the live links in it. You can go back to wherever they're linking you to. This note was on this website. I've taken this from archives.gov. So if I'm violating a copyright, you're in violation of the spirit of the Constitution there, government. You can't copyright jack. You are a product of the states, and you belong to the states and the people of the states. So the note says the following text is a transcript of the Constitution as it was inscribed by Jacob Shallus on parchment. This is the document on display in the rotunda at the National Archive Museum. The spelling and punctuation reflect the original. I have not changed anything. I copied and pasted it into these slides. We're going to read each slide, then we're going to go back and we're going to discuss some of the things that should have been put in there differently. This first one says, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. We'll handle this one first. I agree with Patrick Henry. This should not say we the people. This should say we the several states of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, something to that effect. And then at the end, I would propose we put something in there that, if you'll excuse the flowery way of putting this, it would say something about establish the Constitution of the United States of America, to be executed according to the principles and ideals espoused in the Declaration of Independence as they were understood at the time that that declaration was written and ratified, thus creating the United States of America. That clause would tell you where your compass is, and it would permanently tie the Declaration to the Constitution, preventing them from ever being separated again in the future. So that would be my first proposal here, is that we go back to we the states. Thank you, Patrick Henry. And we put a clause in there that says that the Constitution must be executed according to the principles and ideals espoused in the Declaration of Independence as it was understood by the people who wrote it and ratified it, and thereby first established the United States of America. The Constitution did not establish this country. The Declaration of Independence did. So those two clauses, if we added that, changed that, I think that would fix the preamble very well. So now we have Article 1, Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of Senate and House of Representatives. Herein, we've got to put something in there that limits, binds them down. I would suggest something like all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives, and where they will never be or shall never be. I don't know how we want to put this. This one would require what the founders did. We got to get together and we got to work out the wording. Well, what we have to do here is got to lock this down such that they can't create a bureaucracy. Said all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested, permanently and irrevocably vested in a Congress of the United States, with no power or authority to create additional legislative bodies or transfer or defer their legislative power to another, section of government. And it shall consist of whatever, however we want to word this. We got to get together. I mean, if anybody in the audience, if you're in the classroom, if you've got suggestions for this stuff, type them in. I'll copy them down, because I fully intend to take what we do today and actually start rewriting the Constitution for a future show. But we need to put language in here that binds it down so that the Congress always has to write the legislation. There'll be no more law by executive order. There'll be no more law by judicial fiat. There'll be no more law being passed by regulatory bodies. Anything and everything that comes as a law from the federal government must come from the Congress. And we need language to bind them to that so that they don't give it to somebody else. Section 2. The House of Representatives shall be composed of a member chosen every second year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state in which he shall be chosen. Let's stop here and do a little work. The House of Representatives shall be composed of a member chosen every second year by the people of the several states. Let's do away with that. Let's put something in there, shall be chosen by random lottery according to whatever means the several states devise for that lottery. You're no longer going to vote for the House of Representatives. It's just going to be a lottery. We're going to draw that citizen from anywhere. And it says, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for blah, blah, blah. In other words, state's going to determine this lottery and what the qualifications for that person are. We'll leave it to the states. This says, no person shall be a representative, shall not have attained the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the states of which this shall be chosen. Notice what we just did. You don't need term limits anymore for the House of Representatives. This was simple. This is a house. It's supposed to represent the people. I just did away with parties. Parties are no longer going to help you. You're not running for office at the federal level. Parties are poof, except that they might control how you draw these people by lot, random, whatever. Now, the party might have influenced that at the state level, but if nothing else, I've driven the control back to the several states and away from the federal government, and I've handled term limits with one simple little change to this section of the Constitution. You're not voting for these people anymore. They're drawn by lot as determined by the state. See how I want to do this? Simple. I want to try and rewrite the Constitution, the whole thing, without adding more than one full page of text to it. So far, we've added 2 clauses in a sentence. We've rewritten one clause, we've added a clause, and we've added a sentence. Simple peasy, easy peasy so far. No problems. Look what we've solved. Hold on. Classroom's calling. Good morning, caller. You're on the road to Concord with Joe.
Joe, how are you?
Doing good, man. You got us a suggestion there, boss man?
Yes, sir. Man, I tell you what, I love this idea you have of putting the representatives under lottery. I'd love to see it done both at the state and the federal level. Then people like myself could serve there as the founding fathers intended.
Amen, amen, and amen.
Yep. You and I have had a pretty passionate conversation about that in the past over whether to require it or, give the citizen the choice of going down and registering for it. In other words, no one that didn't want to do it would be drawn in the lottery.
It'd be up to the states, Jimmy. It'd be up to the states. That would all be up to the individual states. We've got 50 states. You'd have 50 different ways of doing this.
Yep, I caught that you added that stipulation to it when you said it a few minutes ago. But I would also suggest that, and I guess this would come under the states as well, but that any person entering into that lottery or being entered into that lottery must not have received any requested government assistance for 7 years prior to the service or during the service of that tenure.
Well, we're going to get to that.
That way people aren't voting themselves their own welfare.
We're going to get to that. We'll handle that.
You may have a better idea than me, but that's something else that we're going to have to head off. Experience has shown is going to be a problem.
We'll tackle that in the enumerated powers, Jimmy. It's coming. It's coming.
Okay, buddy.
All right. Feel free to call back in, man, anytime. Everybody today, phone's open today. This is a classroom discussion. Start typing in the comments, start calling in, email if you want. I'm serious, folks. This is a classroom discussion, just like the founders did. We're all together. I want everybody's opinion if you're willing to offer it.
Yeah, y'all jump in on this because this is doable under Article 5.
Oh, very doable. This is, I've told people there's a legal way out of this mess. Notice how many things, this is a simple addition to the Constitution, changes a lot of this. If you're going to be by lot, hey, you got to fix the school system because you don't want some of these idiots being chosen to go be a congressman, do you?
Right.
You better get busy with that school now, for reals.
Yep. Make the consequences come to bear, and a lot of these problems will be fixed.
Amen.
Again, I apologize for dropping you yesterday like I did. It was actually one of my daughters who had been involved in a fender bender. So
nope, you had family business to attend to, brother.
Yep, all good though. But yep. Anyway, let me get out of the way, brother. But you're on a good conversation here.
We're going to keep going.
All right, see you.
All right, folks. So we've handled Section 2. It continues. Now, the areas that you see in blue, they've been amended as we currently stand. And if you go to your show notes, you're going to find the link to this thing in the show notes. You hit the links and it tells you what's been changed. And this will tell you the different amendments, the text in blue here. We're going to go back. This is the original document. This is how it was originally written. This is where we're going to go back. We're going to pretend we've erased all Amendment 11 forward. They're just gone. We'll rescind them if we ever do this. This is the original document. Let's go back to it. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for terms of years, and excluding Indians not taxed 3/5 of all other persons. I'm going to finish reading this, then we'll come back, so just hold on. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and with every subsequent term of 10 years, in such manner as they shall be by law directed. The number of representatives shall not exceed 1 for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least 1 representative, and until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose, notice how they spell this, 3, Massachusetts 8, blah, 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 blah. That we don't need to read. When vacancies happen in the representation from each state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writ of election to fill such vacancies. The House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other offices and shall have their sole power of impeachment. Now, let's go back. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union. In other words, the taxes are going to be apportioned to the states according to their respective numbers. So if New York has more people in it than Idaho, New York's going to pay more taxes than Idaho. It's proportional contribution to the support of the federal government. It says, which shall be determined by adding the whole number of free persons. This is where we're going to edit this. We're going to be to the whole number of legal citizens, period. That's where we'll end this. What we're going to do is we're going to strike out free persons because we don't have bond servants in this country anymore. We don't have indentured servants. In this slavery issue, this stuff should have never been done. By the ideals and principles set forth in the Declaration, all men are created equal. Well, I don't give a rat's rip what color your skin is or what your ethnicity or even your religion. You are a human being. You're equal. That should have ended it. The founding fathers did not abide by their own ideals. We're going to try better. So we're going to get to this person, which shall be determined by adding the whole number of legal citizens. Done. Now you're not going to get to count illegals anymore. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years. That just sets forth the counting of the people. Down here where it says, when vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority therein shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. No more governor appointing the replacement. That's illegal. We allow it nowadays, but that's illegal. Constitution right there says you have to hold another election. We don't always do that. The House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other offices and shall have the sole power of impeachment. Excuse me. So the only thing I see where we have to add here is we are going to go back to the states are apportioned their taxes by the federal government. We've just eliminated the personal income tax, folks. We've gotten rid of the personal income tax. Goes back to the states. And we've gotten rid of this problem with all these other people that we pad our numbers with in our states. If you're California and you've got 30 million legal citizens and you got 50 million illegals, I don't give a rat's rip about your 50 million. They don't belong there. You're not going to get representation for them. You're not going to get help from them from the federal government. You're just soldiering them on your own. That's your problem. Solved all that. Mark Levin addresses this stuff with whole amendments. No, I solved all of that just by removing one little thing. Going back to the original text and solving one little bitty problem there with the way we identify who we're counting. Section 3. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. Immediately after they shall be assembled in consequence of the first election, they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes. The seats of the senators of the first class shall be vacated at the expiration of the second year, of the second class at the expiration of the 4th year, the third class at the expiration of the 6th year. This is because the ratification of the Constitution the first time, they had to split this up so that the senators are every 6 years, so that 1/3 may be chosen every second year. Now, this blue section here has been amended. It says, and if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive therein may make temporary appointments until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall then fill vacancies. Hold on to that. No persons shall be a senator who shall not have attained the age of 30 years and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, who shall not, when elected, be inhabited of the state which he shall be chosen. Now we've had people live in one state, run for senator and congressman in the other. We're going to quit with all that, but let's go back up to the top. We've got some changes to make here. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have a vote. Cool. Got no problem with that. And I got no problem with the way they split them up. But it says, and if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive therefore may make temporary appointments until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall then fill such vacancies. We've amended this now that so the people of the states vote for their senators. No, we're going back to the state legislatures elect these senators. The people do not do this. See, your House of Representatives represents the people of the state in the federal government. The senator represents the government of the state in the federal government. That was a further division that we've allowed progressives to erase. So we're going to get rid of those amendments that have changed this, and we're going to go back to this. And notice what it says. It says make temporary appointments until the next meeting of their state legislature. Now, the way we do it today, the state legislatures are almost always in session. So there's going to be none of this, hey, I'm going to dismiss my legislature. This senator is going to resign so that the governor can appoint his next little political buddy, and then we just stay that way forever until the next election. No. You're either going to have to leave your state legislature in adjournment forever, if your constitution allows you to do that, or the next time they all come back together again, the legislature chooses a new senator. We've just kind of wiggled our way around this. The senator is supposed to be the representative of the state. Notice I did not put any type of term limit on this on purpose. It is not for the federal government to dictate to the state who it sends as its representative. All I did with the House was change it to how that person is chosen. Because it's of the people, I want to keep that election away from state government control. The House of Representatives is supposed to be a representative of the people of their state. If I leave it to the state government to control how they do it, and they might still do that, they might still abuse it, because I left it to the state government to how they're going to do the random lot of that person. But they're only going to have certain leeway to do that, because it does say, my proposed language would say it does have to be a random lot. So if you write your random lot selection in a way that it isn't random, that would make that law unconstitutional, and the state would have to redo it. But the whole purpose of that is to bind the state legislature's authority, or control rather, over how a federal representative is elected. They should not have any limitations when it comes to their senator. This is all about dividing up the interests within the government structure. This is about putting the checks and balances back in place the way they were intended to, making them work the way they're supposed to. This section continues. It says the vice president of the United States shall be president of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. The Senate, I got no problem with that. The Senate shall choose their other officers and also the president pro temp in the absence of the vice president, or when he shall exercise the office of president of the United States. I got no problem with that. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath of affirmation. When the president of the United States is tried, the chief justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. I've got no problem with that. Judgment in case of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal of office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States, but the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to the law. Okay, cool. This brings something to question. We might need to run back real quick. Let's go back here. It says, the House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment. We need to add impeachment of any federally elected or appointed office. Let's add that. Any federal position, elected or appointed, so that they can impeach anybody. It makes that very clear. So then we've pretty much dealt with this. Got no problems with any of this so far. Anybody in the class? No? We're good? Section 4. It says, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations except as to the places or choosing of the senators. The Congress shall make assembly at least once every year, and such meetings shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. They've changed that day to what, January or something or whatever. They did that to give themselves a little more time to get things done in their day and age. Let's just go back. I don't care what you want to do this. You have your election in November. Let's go back to the first day in December. I don't care. We could leave it January if we want to, but it's not necessary. Not in our time with technology. We can move this date up a little faster to after the election's over. I think we do that. You have the election on the third Tuesday of November, or the first Tuesday of November, rather. They get to meet on the first Monday in December, the whole new Congress. That way we don't have 2.5 months for this lame duck Congress to play silly games. They give you 3 weeks to file any grievances, to handle anything you want with the election. It should be settled by then. Notice what we've done. The state legislatures now are electing your senators. They might be senator forever, but they have very little control over the House of Representatives. It's going to get even better when we get to the president. We're limiting the need for party politics right now. We're not getting rid of it, but we're limiting the need of it. And we're making very few changes to the Constitution. We're just going back to its original text. We're undoing what the progressives have done to us, or we're going to propose to undo it. Article 1, Section 5. Each house shall be the judge of the elections. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's not in blue, is it? Wait a minute. So if the Senate had decided that the election in 2020 was hanky and they weren't counting it, does this not say they have the legal authority to judge whether or not that was a legal election? Each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do. Yeah, it does. Everybody who told me Pence didn't have the authority. You might want to start by reading the United States Constitution. That's not blue. That hasn't been amended. They lied to us. Pence had all the authority. He refused to use it. President Trump, Pence stabbed you in the back. He's no friend of the Republican Party, not the rank and file. Let's read this again. Each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns and qualifications of its own members. In other words, that vegetable that they just elected to the House Representatives or Senate, whatever it was, you say he's not qualified to do this job, send him home. This right here gives the House and the Senate the authority to do that in their own elections. And a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. But a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. It's allowing the House and the Senate to make their own rules. But this tells you that they have final say on whether or not they accept the state's election results. It's right there, and it has not been altered, and it's been there ever since. So when they told you that the House and the Senate had no authority to question the election, they lied. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and, with concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. I've told people before, you can kick somebody out of the House and Senate. Everybody goes, no, you can't. It's right there, folks, black and white, right in front of your face. It's not in blue. It means it has not been amended. It is still in force. Party politics keeps us from doing this. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings, and from time to time publish the same, excepting such parts as may, in their judgment, require secrecy, and the yeas and nays of the members of either house or any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered on the journal. Well, we still do this all the time. Neither house, during the session of Congress, shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place than that which the two houses shall be sitting. This is to prevent you from saying, you know what, we're going to keep the vote from happening by running off. You're not allowed to do that. If you do it, you need to be punished. So let's add something in here. Neither house during the session of Congress shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any place other than that which the two houses shall be sitting. Should one house do this, to the extent that there is no longer a quorum in that house, the majority party of that house will be immediately expelled from Congress. There we go. We solved that problem. You run away to avoid your duty now, you're no longer in office. Oh, and we'll have to add a clause somewhere in the Constitution. Should you ever be expelled or impeached, impeachment's already been handled, but should you ever be expelled from the federal government for any reason, you're no longer qualified to hold an office in the federal government. Little sentence. If we word it right, we can do it quick and simple with one sentence. So far, we've made very few changes. All we've done is gone back to the original, but we're going to put something in there that'll keep the House from adjourning and running off because they don't want the Senate or a majority in the House or whatever to run over them. We've all heard these stories, The House of Texas, the Democrats left and went somewhere else so that they couldn't force the vote. Well, you're not going to be able to do that in the federal government with our proposed change, because if you do that, the majority party is going to immediately be expelled. All of them, every one of them. Even if they sit in the House and say, oh no, I'm waiting for my party to come back, I'm the only person here, I know, nope, you're gone too. Your whole party goes. Your party suffers. Make it draconian on purpose. Section 6. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their representative houses and in going to and returning from the same, and for any speech or debate in either house they shall not be questioned in any other place. No senator or representative shall, during the time in which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emoluments whereof shall have been increased during such time, and no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. We're going to have to think on this one, because this is the language where we need to bind these people from, well, I'm senator, but I'm going to run for president. We got to stop that. First of all, you won't be running for president anymore. We'll show you that in a minute. But we've got to stop this where they run, oh, I'm a House of Representative, but I'm going to run for Senate. No. That's got to stop. I don't know how we're going to tackle that, but I know right here we're going to have to put wording in there to change that mess. And we're also going to have to put some sort of wording in here that you're not allowed to be appointed to, hired in, or solicit employment in any type of lobbying or outside influence organization either. We're going to have to do that. I haven't given real careful thought, but we're going to have to work on that one. Section 7. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with the amendments as on other bills. Every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it became a law, be presented to the United States, to the President of the United States. If he approve, he shall sign it, but if not, he shall return it with his objections to the House in which he shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to be reconsidered. If after such reconsiderations 2/3 of the House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with the objections to the other House, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered, and if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become a law. But in all such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the persons voting for and against the bill shall be entered on the journal of each house respectively. If any bill shall not be returned by the president within 10 days, Sundays excepted, there's that religion in the Constitution that everybody says isn't there, after it shall have been presented to him, the same shall be law, in like manner as if he had signed it, unless the Congress by their adjournment prevent its return, in which case it shall not be law. All right. In other words, no line item veto, and no, as much as I'd like to, we're not going to give that to the president. He doesn't get a line item veto. You'll understand why in a minute. I got something else in mind. And then we're still going to have that if he doesn't sign the bill, but he lets it sit on his desk, it passes by de facto. Hold on there, JMW, we'll get to you. And also, if the House ever adjourns itself so he can't return it to him, that doesn't become, it just dies. The bill dies. I like that. We'll keep all of that there. But we have a classmate, says JMW 78 on Rumble, says, what about the length of sessions? Do we need them up there all the time working endless numbers of laws? When you see one of the amendments I'm about to suggest, JMW, yeah, we might let them meet whenever they want. That might not be a problem. because I'm about to sick something on them that's going to make their job much, much harder. Just hold on. If you don't like my suggestion, we might go back to yours. But for right now, I'm okay with Section 7. Doesn't give me any trouble. If we have other suggestions, put it in the comment section, email it. Because I'm serious, folks. I'm going to go back and I'm going to tweak with this. Continuing Section 7 says, every order, resolution, or vote to which concurrence of the Senate and House of Representatives may be necessary, except on question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him, and being disapproved by him, shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and House of Representatives, according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill. That's the 2/3 override of the President. I got that. Cool. Oh, well, Awake Mess says must be out of office from House or Senate for 2 years before running for either. Okay, let's address that. This is on Rumble. It's from the class. The problem with that is, one, you're not going to be running for office under my proposals as for a House of Representative. That's going to be by lot. So that'll probably never be the same person 2 years in a row. And two, the Senate, they're not going to run and except however each individual state decides to choose its senators. That's also going to be up to the states, Awake Mess. But we have no federal jurisdiction over how the state decides to run its senators. One state might decide to mimic the appointment pattern like they do with the House, just by random lot for their senators. Another might say, hey, I want this senator for life. Since the Senate tour of that state represents that state's government, the federal government has no authority to dictate how that senator is chosen. We can dictate to the state, the federal government can dictate to the state how the House of Representatives is selected, because the House is supposed to represent the people. So it is in the interest of the federal government to make sure the people's representative is not dictated by the state government and all the parties and factions that we're in. This is all supposed to be set up according to the principles and ideals espoused in the Declaration, meaning separation of powers, folks. Separate those powers up. So we keep the state's hand out of the representative selection as much as possible, but you got no authority to meddle with the senator. But they're really running for campaigns is going to be a whole different flavor here in a few minutes. There's some things in the Constitution most people don't know about. When we get to Article 2, you'll see what I'm talking about. So Section 8, here's where we fix some big problems. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debt and provide for common defense and general welfare of the United States, but all duties, imposts, and exercises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Now, before we get into the enumerated powers, let's stop right here. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States, but all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the states and shall never be apportioned on the individual, but the state alone, as each individual state determines by its own legislative authority. In other words, we're going to put wording in here that binds them down so that they cannot impose a personal income tax. And notice how it says it shall be uniform throughout the United States. We're going to tax, maybe we should say the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes upon the several states. Taxes, duties, imposts, and exercises upon the several states to pay the debts and provide for common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout those several states and shall never be levied upon the individual. Or whatever, however you want to do it. You can't actually tell a state they can't have state income tax. That's not right. Federal government has no authority there over the state, as we're about to see. But the point here is, let's limit the taxing power to the state. The federal government taxes the state, not the individual. I just did away with the IRS. Here's your enumerated powers. To borrow money on the credit of the United States for the purposes of running the federal government only. To regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the individual Indian tribes. We're going to put to regulate actual commerce within foreign nations and among the several states. And we can eliminate within the Indian tribes. Well, no, actually we can't. We have treaties with them That makes them sovereign nations. So, okay, keep that in there. But I don't see where it's needed because it says with foreign nations, and the Indian tribes actually technically are foreign nations. So we can play with that a little. To establish a uniform rule of naturalization, uniform rule of naturalization, and a uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. Naturalization is immigration, and uniform law of bankruptcies. So guess what? How you become a U.S. citizen is under the authority of the federal government. To coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and to fix the standards of weights and measurements. We're going to change that to coin hard money and regulate value thereof and foreign coin. I put one word in there, hard money. That means we do not have fiat currency anymore. They're going to have to, you put in there hard and or tangible. I don't care what word you want to put in there. You put a word in there that tells them it has to be tangible currency. Awake mess. How many times can you put your name in the lottery before the limited one? Depends on the state. Awake mess. This is in Rumble's comment section, but it's not that tight. Most states shouldn't go that way on a lottery. If they do, get out of that state. Anyhow, I'm sorry, but that comment had to be. But back to the coining money. Limit this down so we don't do fiat currency. To provide for punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States. No problem. Got that. Let's keep going. To establish post offices and post roads. No problem. To promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and investors or inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Okay, that means patents. We're going to say to promote the progress of science and useful arts only by securing for limited times. We're going to put that word only in there so that you can't misconstrue this to mean that the government gets to fund every scientific endeavor in the world. I just did away for you with you giving grants to people to investigate the mating habits of the super snail. This is only for patents, and that's what it originally was meant for, but we're going to put one little word in there and nail that down. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. That's lesser judges, lesser courts. We can do with that. To define and punish piracy and felonies committed on high seas and offenses against the law of nations. Yup, international law. To declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. Yes, that belongs only to the Congress. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. Okay, I can deal with that. To provide and maintain a navy. No problem with that. To make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces. I've got no problem with that. To provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. Let's add something. To provide for calling forth the militia, which will be the well-regulated body of all male members of military age, comma, to execute the laws of the Union, regulated by the state governments, according to the dictate of state government, In other words, I've defined the militia and I've called them into existence by Constitution. Now the states now have to have those and keep them. And notice how I defined it. All males of military age, all able-bodied males of military age. That was the militia. That still is the militia. So we've settled that problem. Just put a clause in there. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by the Congress. We got to stop here. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia. When you understand the definition of the militia is every able-bodied male, this is not the National Guard. This has not been amended. People have just ignored this clause in the Constitution. This explains a lot of things right here. The gun control argument just got shot the heckin' back if you just go back to the Constitution. And it says to provide for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. In other words, when the federal government calls them up, per the clause above it, reserving to the states respectively, the states get to appoint the officers. There's no standing army in the military unless you raise one on purpose. Those would be regular officers. Technically, right now, we should not have anybody but the National Guard serving because we're not in a time of war. Well, no, we're not in a time of war. So all those executive orders, that's all garbage. It's all unconstitutional. People who read this document find out how far out the line of the bounds we actually are. So all your officers, those are supposed to be appointed by the governors or the state legislatures accordingly. And the authority of training the militia according to the disciplines prescribed by Congress. The states are supposed to train them. Congress is over that. So the states are in charge of their local militias, their state militias, which are all able-bodied men. But Congress still has oversight of all of them to make sure that they are ready to go for national defense. That still works. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may, by secession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. That doesn't say national parks. They are unconstitutional. And to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foreign powers or foregoing powers and all other powers vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department of the office thereof. This right here we need to make a little change on. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, all other powers vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department of their office, with the exception of any law designed to transfer Congress's authority to another body. We need language in here that basically says you are not going to create a bureaucracy. Congress does it. Oh, well, we need to set this department up. No. Congress does it. Congress must do it, and Congress alone. We're going to put I'm going to work on this. I don't know what my suggestion is going to be. Others might have the solution. But we need a simple language. A couple of sentences is all we should need. But we want to bind Congress's hands to punting its authority. Like it's so often, I can't help it, the FDA said. We need to remove that. Now let's go back here for a minute. I'm pretty sure in this is the section where we need to do. So we might want to go back to the start of the enumerated powers, where it's talking about taxes. And we might want to insert another section, not section 8 type thing, but another small paragraph where it basically says Congress shall have the authority to or impose exercise that shall be uniform throughout the United States to do these things. But somewhere in here, we have got to put a clause or some sort of language that says every bill written by Congress shall address one and only one issue at a time, and the bill shall specifically point to that enumerated clause giving Congress the authority to spend the tax apportionation, revenues on that law. What we're looking for here is legislation that says, A, the law's title must specifically point to the enumerated section that gives the authority to Congress to write the law, and B, it must deal with one and only one issue at a time. There's going to be no more of these, hey, I'm going to stick this rider in there knowing nobody wants it, but I get to be king of the world, and I'm going to attach that to, here's Granny's Social Security. Oh, well, he doesn't want to vote to make me king of the world because he wants to kill Granny and take away her Social Security and starve her to death. So I get to be king of the world so that you don't be the bad guy who killed Granny. Y'all know what I'm talking about. This is the section. This is Article 1, Section 8. This is where we got to put language in there that binds their hands down and says you get to write 1, 2, 3-page laws. Very simple. They address one thing at a time. So awake mess, here's why I don't care if they're in session 24/7, 365, because I just told them that they got a lot of freaking work to do. And notice what else I just did. They're not going to be able to address all the stupid little things. They're not going to be worried about who goes to what bathroom anymore. They're going to have too much work on their hands. They don't have time for that mess. We're binding them down. Just like the founder said, use the Constitution to bind them down. So make it so that they have to write each individual law. They can't put 20, 30, 40, 50 million things in a 30,000 page document, pass it all at once where they haven't had a chance to read it, or hide things in there. Bind them down. So we're going to need, it shouldn't be more than 2, 3, maybe 4 sentences, but we're going to insert it here. Let's see real quick. Yeah, let's get through section 9 real fast, and then we'll go to the break. Section 9, the migration or importation of such persons as any state now existing shall think proper to admit. Oh, look, states get to admit their people. Shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be up. This is state. This is slavery crap again. Let's just strike that from the Constitution then. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless, when case of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. Unless when cases of only rebellion or invasion, as defined by the act of use of arms against the United States of America, the public safety may require it. Therefore, January 6th is no longer a rebellion, you jackwagons. A rebellion has to be armed. It has to use force. It has to be something that declares its goal is the overthrow of the country. Let's put language in there and nail that down. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. We pass them all the time. You know, retroactive bills, those are ex post facto laws. We do it all the time. Oh, I'm going to give you a tax break going back 2 years. That's an illegal law. Let's start enforcing the Constitution. It says, no capitation or other direct tax shall be laid, unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. This is personal income tax. We're going to strike that part in blue. No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid upon an individual citizens of the United States, of the several states. But that now when we change that, we've twice bound them down from federal personal income taxes. That doesn't mean you won't get a state personal income tax. It means you won't get a federal personal income tax. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. Okay. No preference. That state's got a real big problem now with eBay. You're getting taxed on eBay from both states, the one where you sell it and the one that buys it. That right there, just enforce that. That ends that double taxation process. No preference shall be given by any regulation or commerce or revenue to the port or of one state over the other. We do that all the time now. Nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obligated to enter, clear, or pay duties to another. No money shall be drawn from the treasury, but in consequence of apportions made by the law, and regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. This might be where we want to put in expenses can only be on one bill at a time, a bill at a time, one specific issue in an instance or article law, whatever, one specific point of law, which points to the enumerated power that authorizes the expense. This might be where we want to put that language in there. And it says, no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office or profit or trust under them shall be without the consent of the Congress, except of any present emolument, blah, 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 blah. You can't make nobility. Let's go back here. This is the section where we're going to want to find a spot to insert. No money shall be spent on any form of welfare to an individual citizen or citizenry or state of the several states. This is where we put the language that says no public welfare. No federal welfare programs of any form to either an individual, to a company, or to a state. There will be no federal money spent to support a person, a state, or a business, or even an industry. That's not going to happen. This is where we put that language. We'll insert that in here. And there's probably some other things in here where we're going to work on. It shouldn't be more than a line or two. But we need to put something in there that limits where they're spending their money. But if we make them point to the enumerated power that allows them to spend the money, and we put something in there that specifically limits their ability to tax the individual at the federal level, and we put something in there that prohibits them from spending it on anything that might be seen as welfare. The only other thing I think we could put in here is no federal taxation system shall be permitted that has the effect of double taxation on money already earned. So if we get them in there, I think we'll be okay. That should get us through section 9. We'll work on that. We'll come back to Section 10 in a little bit. It's break time. We might not get through the Constitution today. We might have to pick this up again next Friday, but we're going to keep going on this class because whether or not I got a whole bunch of people watching me, I don't care. I'm having fun today. This is what I'm about. This is where we teach. Now, I haven't played this in a while, so we're going to have a little fun. Y'all enjoy. I'll see you in about 5 minutes.
Gentlemen, there is no longer any ground for hope. If we wish to be free, if we wish to preserve inviolate those inestimable privileges which belong to us as free men, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, in which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our struggle be obtained, then we must fight. I repeat it, sir. We must fight! And appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all we have left us.
Arms, Mr. Henry! What arms? We're weak, sir!
They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so powerful an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week? Or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and a British Guard shall be stationed in every house? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs, hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemy hath bound us hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means the God of nature hath placed in our power. 3 millions of people, armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country that which we possess, are invincible by any force our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations, who will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Besides, sirs, we have no election. Should we be base enough to desire it, it is now already too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat, but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged, their clanking may be heard upon the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come!
Mr. Henry, we speak for peace, sir!
It is in vain to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that blows from the north shall bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that they wish? What would they have? Is life so dear? Or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take. But as for me, give me liberty or give me death!
Two arms, Mr. Henry.
Excuse me. Okay, Patrick. God, I love him. He's my man. Comment on the road to Concord. Jason asks, says, have we discussed anything regarding the national borrowing or debt balanced budget? Here's the problem with that. First of all, the way the Constitution is currently written, doesn't matter if they give you a balanced budget or not. If they were actually doing it correctly, they'd only be able to draw money for a law one at a time according to what they needed. Wouldn't matter if you give them a budget. And they wouldn't be borrowing money except in time of war. Some of the things we're trying to do here are offer suggestions and changes to the Constitution so that it's really simple. Now, there was one comment here in Rumble that when we go back and we talk about how a law is going to be written or what laws are written, we would probably want to put, when we tell them that the law has to address the enumerated power, has to address one specific issue. Yeah, wherever that language is at, we're also going to put down there and must be written in the common language of the time. And by common, meaning that only written so that the normal person understands it. No legalese. So we'll work on that. Like I said, this is something I'm going to work on. I'm going to address this. But you can't tie Congress down to a balanced budget unless you put something there, in there like in case of time of war or national emergency. But the minute you do that, they're going to find a national emergency for everything. So I think the solution to that is in how we're making them write their laws. We're done away with welfare of any type. And we're going to bind them so that every individual expense has to have its own law. Well, they got to debate each and every one of those. So right there, that alone, we've forced them to focus on just what's going to be important. The only other thing I might suggest is we add Jefferson's comment in there about no law passed by a Congress shall exceed or extend past 20 years. You know, or we'll put an immediate nullification date line in there. So you can't write a law that's 200 years old and still in effect. So like I said, this is a think piece. I'm going to be going back through this, rereading the notes and listening to it myself over time. And there'll come a time where I'm going to write the Constitution again, and I'm going to put in there, you know, in red where we suggest the article, what we change. And I might even post this and see if I can't spam it out to the quote unquote conservative world. JMW 78. What about making the states partially responsible for things the federally funded in their state to help avoid pork projects? See, this is what I'm trying to avoid, JMW. First of all, that they already do that. They make the states wholly responsible for them, like Medicare and Medicaid. What I'm trying to do is limit the language we use. I don't want to add more than one page to the Constitution, and I don't want to address specific individual practices. What we're looking to do is like the federal founders did. We want generalities that will bind all of that stupid stuff down. So we got to be smart like they are. Don't get caught with the weeds. Get up above and let's look at the forest and work with that. So we're wanting to write things in here that force them to change the way they write the laws. Hey, I got to point to the specific enumerated power. I got to deal with one issue at a time. I can't pile them all together. That takes care of your pork project right there, folks. In practice, it will. And they're not allowed to spend on welfare of any type. And they have to write it in plain language of the day. That's going to make it a lot harder to pull off what they do. So that's where I'm thinking. That's how I'm trying to address this. Let's pick up in Article 1, Section 10. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligations of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. Well, we should get back to that because that would cure a lot of the things that are going on right now. we'll discuss that later. We might need to come back to the Constitution just to discuss what it covers. Comment in the class section on Rumble is really funny. This is no state shall, without the consent of the Congress, lay any imposts or duties or imports or exports except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws. And the next produce and in the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on import or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revisions and control of the Congress. In other words, basically, the states aren't allowed to tax each other, and they're only allowed to do import-export taxes to help them raise money to pay the federal government. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty or tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, except entered into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. Okay, folks, do you understand what you just read? It's not in blue, so it has not been amended. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops. So Congress has given all the states permission to keep the Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps. Except, did you see anywhere in the enumerated powers where it says Congress has the authority to keep a standing Army or a standing Air Force? They have a standing Navy. That's authorized, but not a standing Army. And that means all of this is unconstitutional. Oh, I know. I got it. I understand what's coming to most people's minds. The point I'm making is we're reading the Constitution today and we're finding out how far afield we've gone. Now, we might need to go back and give them authorization to keep a standing Air Force and a standing Army. But we've got to be careful. We're going to want to bind that down too. Because the Army and the Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps are not the militia. You say, well, Joe, in modern warfare, you know how hard it would be to invade a country that has actual, real, trained, regulated militias in its states? You invade Florida. Yep, I've only got, whatever. There's 1 million standing Army in Florida. Oh, I'm going to be able to invade them with hey, called out the militia. You got 14 million men already now ready to go, locked and loaded. They picked up their weapons, and an hour later they're formed and they're in the field. Wait a minute. Now you got 1 million professional soldiers with 14 million trained, well-regulated militia right there on top of it. You're 4 million in people invading that we're going to whoop up on that 1 million. You're now outnumbered 4-1. You're going to lose. We're not paying attention to the concepts, principles, and ideals in the Constitution anymore. We just want to do whatever the heck it is we want to do. I'm trying to do an exercise where we think like the Founding Fathers. The principles are natural law, natural rights. The idea is to write this document as simply as possible. I told you when we started out, let's not add more than 1 page total to the Constitution. So far, I don't think we've added more than a paragraph, maybe a paragraph and a half. So far, I think we've reached our goal. We haven't added too much to it yet. Let's keep going. Article 2, Section 1. The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President, choose for the same term, be elected as follows. Now pay attention, folks. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors, equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. Here's where we're going to get really squirrely. All of this has been changed for a reason, a bad reason. This is all progressive handiwork. This is how the original Constitution read. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for 2 persons. So let's say I have 7 electors from my state. I'm going to have 7 people there. Of those 7 people, they can vote for 2 people, of whom 1 at least shall not be an inhabitant of the state from which they themselves, from which they come. And they shall make a list of all the persons voted for, and of all the number of votes for each, which lists they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be the President. If such a number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if there be more than one who have such majority and have an equal number of votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately choose by ballot one of them for president. And if no person have a majority, then from the 5 highest on the list, the House shall in like manner choose the president. But in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member of members from 2/3 of the states. The majority of all the states shall be necessary to choice. In every case, after the choice of the president, the person having the greatest number of votes of electors shall be the vice president. The person having the greatest number of votes of the electors shall be the vice president. But if there should remain 2 or more who have equal votes, the Senate shall choose from them by ballot the vice president. So that's all really confusing, right? Let me explain this to you. Let's say my state has 7 representatives. This is how the president used to be elected, should still be elected. They go to the Congress. They go to Washington. My state, my 7 people, we all meet. I vote for 2 people. One of them has to be out from outside my state. I vote for 2. And I got 6 other electors with me. They each vote for 2 people. So all 7 of us put our names together. And we count up who we voted for. So Joe Schmuck got 4 of our votes, and Louis got 3, and so got 2, and Sarah got 1, whatever. We make that list. We fold it up, we seal it, and we give it to the President of the Senate. And every other state does the same thing. That's how the president used to be elected. And the state decided who the electors were. Again, the president is supposed to be elected by the states, not the people. The progressives changed that for reasons, nefarious reasons, subversive reasons. If we go back to this way of doing things, you don't even need to run for president anymore. Parties don't have a whole lot to do with it either. Every representative, every electoral Congress member has to vote for 2 people. Now, my state could send all 7 of my people and say, you're not allowed to caucus together. You just go there and vote for who you want to vote for. If you talk about it to anybody else, we'll recall you. If one of the other members writes back and says, hey, Joe's trying to lobby for his guy, Joe gets recalled. That could be, if you've got a responsible state, they'll do something like that. Or it could be, hey, go up there and get unanimous with what you do. All of you should be voting for the same 2 people. But if we do it this way, you take it out of the hands of the individuals. You and I would never get to vote for president anymore, and we shouldn't. He's not president of the United States per se. He's president of the several states. He's president of the Confederation, not the state itself. That's your governor. We're supposed to keep the states in our minds as sovereign nations who have bound together to make themselves stronger, an allegiance. Think of it as a team made up of separate states. We need to go back to this way of electing the president. And what would happen? Let's say all of our electors count these votes. The way this worked, we give 90 votes for Donald Trump and 83 for Joe Biden. It's not Donald Trump and whoever he chose to be vice president anymore. It's Donald Trump got 83 and Joe Biden got whatever, or 90 votes for Trump and 83 for Biden, and all the others got down in the 60s or 50s. It's Trump and Biden. Biden is VP now. See, VP was supposed to be the second highest number of votes, not party affiliation. You didn't run for office as, I'm running for president, this is my vice presidential candidate. No, that's not how it worked. We have 30 people running for president. The top voter is going to be pres, the second top voter is going to be VP, regardless of party affiliation. We need to go back to this. We need to go back to this. So I would strike the amendments that change the way we elect our president. Just do away with them. Go back to this because it works. It works just fine. And once again, it limits the role and power of party. if you just stick to this. Because the parties would actually have to take over all the states. Now, if we want, we could put a provision in there that says you can't have a political party, but I guarantee you they'll just find another way around that. We're not looking for language that binds down each and every little way of getting around something. We're looking for the ideal. We're drawing the target. And then we're just going to have to raise up citizens that constantly shoot for the target. So let's perfect the target, because the founding fathers didn't have the target small enough. They had a big bullseye. We're trying to amend it as least as possible, but in a way that tightens the bullseye up so that we're going to shoot for a smaller V ring. If you're a shooter, you know what I mean. So we're still in this section. It says the Congress may determine the time and choosing of the electors and the day on which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States. In other words, Congress can tell them when they got to show up and elect the president. No person except a natural-born citizen. All right, stop right here. Natural-born citizen, being defined as somebody born in the United States to American citizens or parents of American citizen in such a way that they, and having not acquired dual citizenship or competing citizenship of another nation or foreign power. We're going to have to put a clause in there to define natural born, because that's what it originally meant. It was meant that you were born an American with no other competing citizenships. Or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of the Constitution shall be eligible for president, da, 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 da. So we're going to put a clause in there. Let's see, I'm reading a note in the class. Jason says, do you think having different parties in president and vice president would potentially cause vice president to undermine the president? It did in the past. Congress can sort that mess out. Part of this, Jason, is for us to be grown-ups again and deal with the job at hand. If we're trying to bind parties and play all those games, what we're going to end up with is a 5,000-page long constitution. Like I said, we're trying to tighten up the target and then raise citizens who shoot for the target rather than ways around it. This next part's been amended. It says, in the case of the removal of the president from office or his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the same shall be devolved on the vice president. The Congress may, by law, provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability, both of the president and vice president, declaring what office shall then act as president, and such officer shall act accordingly until the disability be removed or the president shall be elected. If we want, we could add the 25th Amendment type language in here, but it shouldn't have ever been required. That amendment should not have been required because the Congress should have known that Woodrow Wilson was mentally incapacitated and should have impeached him on medical grounds. They won't. You've got a 25th Amendment there, and you've got the Constitution itself that should have already removed Biden. They won't do it. That's the faction of party doing that. If you can't get the Republicans to fight tooth and nail to get rid of somebody they know has dementia, it doesn't matter. There's no language we can put in the Constitution to fix this. But in the case of removal of the president of office or his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the same shall devolve on the vice president. In other words, Pamela Harris should step up and say, hey, look, I got to take over. Biden's nuts. But the problem is that she's not a natural-born citizen. She's not qualified to be president. She should never have been VP. But anyhow, this is all the mess we make when we don't pay attention to following the principles and ideas laid out for us to follow. So I don't really see a need to change much of this. You could tweak it a little bit if you want. We'll readdress that. So the president shall, at stated times, receive from his services a compensation which shall neither be increased or diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected. That there's language to that too that we read earlier. It says Congress can't vote itself a raise. That raise doesn't take effect until the next Congress is appointed. So he shall have been elected and shall not receive within that period any other emoluments from the United States. About paying him. Before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my abilities, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Let's add a clause. And upon demonstrating that he took this oath with a purpose of evasion, or deceit or deception, be immediately removed from office, to be determined by majority vote of the House and Senate. In other words, we've got to put language in there so that if you take the oath of office and then you turn around and I'm going to fundamentally change the United States of America by executive decree, you're immediately removed. Boom. Until such time as Congress reaffirms your appointment. You need to be removed from a position of power at that point because you're a subversive agent. We need to tweak this. This has come up enough in our history that we need to add that here somehow or another. Section 2. The President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and the militia of the several states. When called into the actual service of the United States, he may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in case of impeachment. He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provide 2/3. Let's stop right here. Treaties, so long as they are in alignment with the governing principles and ideals of the Declaration of Independence, and provided 2/3 of the senators concur. I don't want you to be able to nullify the Constitution by treaty. So we're going to put that language in there. And he shall nominate, and by and with advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges and Supreme Court, and all other offices of the United States, whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. But the Congress may, by law, vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the President alone, in the courts of law, or in heads of department. In other words, the executive has most of the authority to put the people in place to run the country. The President shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting the commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. Section 3. He shall from time to time give the Congress information on the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them with respect to time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and should commission all other officers of the United States, of standing Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever. Yeah, man, if I ever made president, I'd exercise this one a lot. Hey, Congress, Senate, go home. I'll call you when I'm ready for you. Goodbye. That's my authority right there. You're adjourned. See you later. Yeah, I just solved that problem. We'd run fine without any new laws. Section 4. The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, defined as making war or an active act of subversion against the United States of America, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. I would redefine treason, because I happen to think that subversion, where you're trying to undermine and rewrite the Constitution without openly doing so, I think that's a guerrilla war against the country. So if at the very least, I would do treason, subversion, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. And I think I would probably put something in there, shall be removed. I don't know, shall be impeached and his removal sought from office on impeachment, upon conviction. In other words, I'd put a little language in there that kind of binds Congress's hands. If they got reason to believe he's doing these things, or she, you must impeach him and seek his conviction or her conviction and removal. I'd tighten that up a little bit. Article 3, Section 1. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior. We need to define that. And shall, at stated times, receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. maybe a clause or another sentence that said, should they be shown or demonstrated or exhibit bad behavior, they shall be immediately impeached by the Congress. We need to do something with that right there. We need to point to the fact that they can and should be impeached and removed from office regularly. Section 2, the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under the Constitution, the laws of the United States, and the treaties made, or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be party, the several states, to controversies between two or more states, between a state and its citizens of another state. That's been amended. I think I'd have to check real hard on that. I don't know exactly what they did there, but I'd pay real close attention to that because it's probably not a good thing. Between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizen thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects. In other words, anything that crosses a state boundary, the federal judges have a jurisdiction in it. In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, and those in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. In all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. In other words, they have jurisdiction over these things that cross state lines, but they're their appeals level. They're the ones when the states can't hash it out themselves. The trial of crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury, and such trial shall be held in the states where the said crime shall have been committed. But when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at such place or places as Congress may by law have decreed. I got a question for you right here. Is this in blue? No, it has not been amended. So why do we have plea bargaining? You're supposed to have a trial. Plea bargaining is a problem. We need to address that. Now, I don't know that that needs to be in the Constitution or not, but that is something that the legal system needs to address. At some point, we need to quit with the plea bargaining. And we need to quit with this, let's get one criminal to go after. No. Change the way you're doing your legal system. But it says trials. Because a lot of times people end up in jail that shouldn't be there just because if you go to trial, we could end up putting you in jail for 50 bazillion years. And if you take this plea bargain, you ought to get 10. So the innocent person pleads guilty just to avoid your abuse of the court system. That needs to stop. But that's a different story. One of the other things we're going to have to do here, we need to go back somewhere in section 2. And we need to address, and this might require a paragraph. This is one of the most lengthy changes I want to make. We need to address the fact that the Supreme Court may not make a ruling that has the effect of law and may not have a ruling that addresses anything other than the original intent of those who passed that law and may not go outside of the documents directly associated or connected to the passing or explanation of that law. So in other words, you're not going to be going to foreign countries to get your reasoning to rule on a United States constitutional issue. We've got to bind the court down with that type of language. No force of law, original intent of the law, no documentation outside of that which is directly connected to the debate over an explanation of how that law is supposed to be understood and executed. That's going to require a little bit more language, but we've got to put that in there. Section 3, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or on a confession in open court. The Congress shall have power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood, meaning I can't punish your family, or that's a biblical principle, by the way, or forfeiture except during the life of the person attained. In other words, the punishment can't go past their lifetime. I want to insert a paragraph somewhere in here or a sentence. I want treason and or subversion. If you're going to work to undermine this social compact, essentially I consider that making war against the United States. But I want that pointed out too. We need to add that into the Constitution. if you're subverting this Constitution, and then somewhere along the line here, we also need to, just like they did here, they defined treason. We need to act in there as subversion as well. So put that in between these two paragraphs and then define subversion. But basically, it means to actively undermine the laws and the Constitution and the social compact of the three. That and the Declaration as well. Article 4, Section 1. Full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state, and the Congress may, by general laws, prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and procedures shall be approved and effect thereof. In other words, each state has to treat each other equally. Section 2, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in these several states. Ooh. So if I have the Second Amendment in my state, I should have the Second Amendment in California too. Oh, wait a minute. We don't do that, do we? That's a violation of the Constitution, isn't it? Oh, wow. Maybe we ought to read this thing from time to time. A person charged in any state with treason Ooh. Class, what if we, instead of the State of the Union, or in addition to it, the president from time to time must convene both houses of the Senate for the purposes of reading the full text of the United States Constitution in public and before the hearing of every member of both houses and the judiciary? What if we put that in the Constitution, where his little butt or her little butt has to call the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court into the meeting, wherever they're going to be, and read the entire text of the Constitution before them once a year, every year? What do you think? Should we put that in the Constitution? I think we do. I think we'll put that right in there somewhere where it says he's going to give his State of the Union address. I think we'll make a paragraph right after that and put that in there as well. I'll make sure I make a note of that. A person charged in any state with treason, felony, or other crime who shall flee from justice and be found in another state shall, on demand of the executive authority of the state from which he fled, be delivered up to be removed to the state having jurisdiction of the crime. No person held to service of labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall, in consequence of any law or regulation therein, be discharged from such service of labor, but shall be delivered up on claim. Let's just strike this. We don't need this anymore. This is about indentured servants and slavery. We'll strike that language altogether. We don't need that anymore. We never did. Well, never should have. Section 3. Notice we've added language. We've struck several paragraphs too, folks. New states may be admitted by the Congress into the Union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, nor any state be formed by the junction of two or more states or parts of states without the consent of the legislature of the states concerned as well as the Congress. In other words, if the people in Washington want to join Idaho, they're going to have to get congressional approval, which is never going to happen, because that would turn Idaho into a red state with a lot more votes than little bitty blue Oregon. So that's not going to happen. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claim of the United States or of any particular state. Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government. Oh, stop the presses. Ooh, who's that? Vicky Vale. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm nerding out on an old Batman show. Caitlin, if you're listening, you can look that one up. The United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government, which means we are not a democracy. So if you've been pushing for democracy, you are unconstitutional, meaning our current way of electing people in a federal government is unconstitutional. Well, Joe, we passed amendments. You didn't amend this. You did not amend Section 4 of the Constitution, which means the amendments changing how you vote for the president and the senators are null and void. Oopsie. Too smart by half, aren't you, you idiot progressives? Wipe them off the map there, governors. You can legally, right there, Section 4. That's your authority right there. And a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion. Oh, Biden, open borders? that constitutes an invasion by the Southern peoples. You're in violation of the oath. Out you go, or at least under our Constitution. And on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature not convened against domestic violence. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, hold up. Remember when the states were asking Trump to come stop the riots from Antifa? And he didn't do it? He was in violation of his oath of office. You keep up with that Trump crap, you Trump bots. Your boy's as bad as the others. And don't point to the Constitution anymore, because you only want it when it suits your purposes. It says, the United States, this is Congress too, both parties, but especially the executive, on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. That actually happened under Trump and we did nothing. Article 5, the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to the Constitution, or, on the application of the legislatures of the 2/3 of the several states, shall, there you go, this is Article 5, 2/3 of the states can apply for this, shall call a convention for proposing amendments which, in either case, shall be valid to all intent and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the 1st and 4th clauses in the 9th section, legalese, But this allows us to do exactly what we're proposing right now. Get 2/3 of the state together, propose amendments to the Constitution, and then try to ratify them. This is the only way we got left to us right now, folks. We need to get busy on it. Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid. That's old language. This constitutional law of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, put in there in accordance with the principles and ideals of the Declaration of Independence as understood at the time of its writing, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Bound there. Oh, wait a minute, Joe. That language you were just writing about the judges, it's already in place right there. Oh, wait a minute. No. See, you got to put in there the principles. Okay, yeah, we need some tweaking here, folks. Anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding, the senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. But no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. No religious test, parentheses, meaning an affirmation of one denomination over another, close parentheses, shall ever be required as a qualification to the office of the United States. Article 7. The ratification of the Convention of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states, so ratifying the same. By the way, I'm not going to take away this old, no longer relevant language. I'm going to leave it in place because it shows you the way in which we came. The only things I'm removing are the stuff dealing with slavery, because under the Declaration, that slavery garbage should have never been in the Constitution. They weren't shooting at their own target there. The word "the" being interlined between 7th and 8th lines of the first page, the word "third," these are amendments tested Jackson's secretary, done in convention by this unanimous consent of the states, present 17th day of September, blah, 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 George Washington. That's where we'll stop for today. Next week, we'll do the Bill of Rights. And I might actually have part of this rewritten, and we'll put it up and we'll tweak it over time. The goal, again, take the Declaration of Independence as it was understood when it was written. It is pointing to natural law and natural rights in the John Locke school of thought, Rousseau, Cicero, especially John Locke. And it's taking that as its guide in the Declaration. These are our principles. These are our ideals. These are the what and the why of the United States of America. The Constitution is the how. So we want to rewrite the how with as little change as necessary. And part of what I want to do is do away with the progressive changes, those amendments that tried to make us into a democracy. They didn't change that one section that says it has to be a Republican form of government, which means their amendments are unconstitutional. They'll say, no, Joe, the judges are bound by the reading of the Constitution. So if they rule that, oh, no, those amendments are still good, they're no longer ruling in good behavior. You can impeach those judges. You should impeach those judges immediately. See, this is what I was discussing earlier with one of our classmates. I want to seek to put as little language in there as possible. And I want to seek to teach the citizens to uphold it as it was understood at the time it's written and hold to it. When that's done, you don't need to worry about writing 5,000 pages to bind down this particular individual action that somebody might want to do. It doesn't work, because you get 5,000 pages and they'll find another way around it. Now you need 5,010. Then they'll find another way. Now you're at 5,500. That's what the founding fathers said. If you're not a moral and righteous people, it doesn't matter how binding your laws are. The unjust will go right through your binds like a whale through a net. It only works for a moral people. Morality only comes from a religious people. Now, if you want to go back and correct something, I didn't touch on this. If you want to go back and correct one of the founders' biggest mistakes, you go back and write in there, no oath of office for any atheist. You take out this affirmation garbage. By the way, if you go back and look affirmation in 1828, yeah. But the purpose for an oath was you were swearing, I bind myself by the judgment of the creator of the universe. Now, that was in the legal documentation of the time back then. They didn't expect us to undo all those definitions. But if you go back, you're going to find out that the founding fathers did not allow atheists in government at any level because they didn't trust them to uphold the laws. They weren't, an atheist by definition is not afraid of eternal judgment. So you'll do whatever the heck you want to do at that time. I didn't suggest we put that back in the Constitution, did I? I know that it was in there. It is in there. It's explicit in the taking of an oath. But we've morphed everything over time because it's not suited to our tastes, our sensitivities, our likes today. It's like, I'll pop you into the pew real quick. Female preachers. Well, the Bible needs to be modified, keep up with the times. No, it doesn't. I am Yahweh, I do not change. Is it Micah or Micah? So you're going to come along and rechange his word? Oh, very progressive of you. It's not going to end well. The priesthood is male, period. Not because I'm a chauvinist, but because Yahweh said that's the job he gave to men. I'm not the rule maker. My job is to follow the rules as faithfully as I can. Same thing applies to the Constitution. Well, yeah, Joe, but the Constitution's a living document. I can refigure it any way I want. Then it means nothing. It means nothing. If you can reinterpret it any way you want to the times of, the spirit of the time, it means nothing and everything at the same time. So just throw it away, which is exactly what they've done. They point to it because it gives the illusion of authority, but we've been under the rule of man and the rule of law for a long time, folks. We just read the Constitution today. Did you see the several places where I stopped and told you some of the things we're battling with today are still handled by the Constitution? You don't need to change anything to do away with this mess. It's right there. You just have to understand what you're reading in the context of the times in which it was written and ratified. We don't want to do that. That requires work. Like one of the classmates pointed out in an email to me last night, I'm doing a lot of that work for you, and I'm giving you shortcuts. You don't have to spend years learning this stuff. Joe tells you, go here, here, and here, and look it up real quick for yourself. I can't help the bouncing scream, folks, right now. We've got really bad wind gusts outside, and it is literally bouncing the walls and the floor that the studio's on. Sorry about that. But I'm trying to be a time saver for those of you out there that got other things to do in this world. I understand that. So that brings me to a quick rabbit. I'll circle back. I don't know that your classmate meant it this way, but his email was a bit of a chastisement. Quit expecting everybody else to drop everything they're doing and do all the work that you've done, Joe. They don't have time. They've got other jobs. They've got family members. They have other commitments. He didn't say it that way, but I read it in there, and I don't think it was intended that way, but it doesn't matter. The message was there, and it was loud and clear, and whether it was intended or not, it's correct. I've been a little judgmental on people who won't spend the time to look this stuff up. I got it. Now, where I am going to get a little cranky with you is when I've done the work and I hand you the almost finished product and all you got to do is confirm it for yourself. Now I've got a reason to be a little upset with you. Because most of the time, by the time I get a show done and I hand it to you, you only need 15, maybe 20 minutes tops to check the things I've put in your show notes for you. And when you won't do that, yeah, now that bothers me. It bothers me more when all you do is listen to me run my mouth and don't check behind me to make sure I'm right. That bothers me a great deal more, because then you're accepting my word for it. That's the appeal to authority. That's a fallacy in your own thinking. Don't do that. At least skim through it. But yeah, I will endeavor to adjust my bad attitude when it comes to that and realize that that's what my job is here for you. I give you the shortcuts, not cheats. I do the bulk of I do the research. I hand it to you. I give you the administrative brief. You got to decide what to do with it. That's what we're going to be trying to beat into my head. I've told you many times, I don't think I'm perfect. Tell you that all the time. You still got classmates out there that just casually listen and still think I'm an arrogant know-it-all. They don't listen to me, or they won't give me they won't take me at my word. They won't grant me the truth of what I'm trying to tell them. That's okay. You can rewrite the Bible too. It just doesn't turn out well. Anyhow, sorry about that static. I left the phone on. My bad. Just realized it. I don't. Quick personal note. For those who are used to perfect audio, and there's a lot more of you out there than me, when I do stupid things like leaving this on, hear that static? My younger days taught me to ignore that. Because if you're ever in a tank, you wear what's called a CVC helmet. It's a communications helmet. They're always staticky like that, 24/7. That just tells you it's on. So when I hear something like that, my mind still, this many years later, filters it right out. I don't hear it. So to those of you that it bothers, I apologize for today. I realize that's been on ever since Jimmy's call. My apologies. I literally don't hear that stuff. I don't know how I just became aware of it just then. I mean, I'm hearing it, but my mind filters it out, because it's like being on like I said, on a communications helmet, CVC helmet in a tank. That stuff, that white noise is always there in your ear. It doesn't take long to it just filters out. So for those of you that might have bothered, I apologize. Okay, Monday. Monday will be Manic Monday. Storyline, whatever one grabs me. I try to put the stories together in a way that continuity over time to show you trends of what's going on. Remember, I like patterns. I try to bring you stories that might be years old, connected to modern story, current stories. I'm trying to show you pattern. I have no idea what we're doing next Tuesday. None. Or Wednesday. Thursday, I think it might be time to go back. It might be the first time to circle back and start working and laying the groundwork for the progressive movement. Thursdays are Throwback Thursdays, also, Conspiracy Theory Thursday. Let's set the conspiracy theories aside for a while. Let's start a series of shows laying the groundwork of the progressive movement. And not all of this is going to be bash the progressive time. Let's see who they were and what they were looking to do. Let's make them human, because what they did might be looked at as wrong, evil, harmful. But we got to try for the best we can, looking at what they did, what they wrote. Was that their intent? Because I think in a lot of cases, the intent of the progressive, the individual progressive, was to do good. It's just they point the right problem out. They just have the wrong solutions. So we'll lay some groundwork, and what we're probably going to have is a couple of weeks in a row back to Teddy Roosevelt, back to Woodrow Wilson. Well, we might even go back further this time. We might take ourselves all the way back to Hegel. And instead of progressives, we might look at the whole secular humanist movement. It might take longer. I'll get to work on that. Next Friday, a week from today, we're going to finish what we're doing. We're going to go through the Bill of Rights. We're going to address the proposed amendments, because some of them were never ratified, but we need to look at what they were doing and trying to do. And then we're going to look at the ones that were ratified. And some of them need to be tweaked or made modern language, like quartering troops in the House. That's actually a no spying amendment. And the reason they don't want to read that today is because if they go back to the times and they understand what it meant at that time when it was written, well, then all this electronic spying on you's got to go out the window. And the government doesn't want to give that up. They also don't want you to be armed. So they rewrite the Second Amendment in their arguments. They amend it without amending it. You know, it's just common sense gun control. There's no such thing as common sense life control, right? You have the right to life, liberty, whatever. We might even need to tweak the Declaration at some point, because there's a lot of people who think, well, if it doesn't mention it, you don't have that right. Constitution doesn't say you have a right to privacy. Yeah, it does. In the Bill of Rights, the 9th and 10th Amendment. But again, people don't pay attention. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to catch up on the things that we were supposed to be learning in junior high school and didn't. The things that were kept from us. It's remedial education here on this show at a college level. It builds on itself. You need to be here. You need to watch show after show after show. Go back and catch up the ones you miss. I know, a lot of time. But if you want to educate yourself, this is a shortcut. If you've been with me for any length of time, you know I spread the net really wide. The purpose of this show is to concentrate on the principles of individual rights and liberty according to natural law and natural rights. You know, the road to Concord. But you can't get to Lexington Green without going through the history of the Judeo-Christian ethic. So I've melded them. But along the way, I will show you how all of this ties into many events in history, and we will go wide and far. National, international. If you've been with me any length of time, you've noticed that I've got that tendency. I connect things that most people don't even see as being connected. And once you let me show them to you, most of you go, ah, yeah, I see it now. Let me keep doing that for you. And we'll learn together. And we'll grow. And we'll help each other along the way. And remember, my goal is still for all of you communicating in the chat sections, become a community. Get to know each other, help each other, answer questions, especially with the new ones. New people who comment, you older class members, please be kind. Even if they don't deserve it at first. Get them used to our ethos, our culture, our classroom. Welcome them in. Encourage their participation, even if you disagree with them. Just help them keep it civil. That's all. All right, I want everybody to have a good, safe weekend. I thank each and every one of you for being here. I love every one of you. Stay safe. See you Monday.